104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. The second leg of the Triple Crown about to get underway Saturday. So we bring in the expert, the man we all go to. I follow him on Twitter. Andy Serling, man, I'm telling you, I need help with this one because I feel like people are hating on Nyquist just to hate on Nyquist.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I mean, I don't really. Maybe they feel that he's somehow disrespecting American Pharaoh by daring to do what he did. The nerve of that horse. He's a very devious horse.
What is that horse thinking?
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. It's a disgrace to all horses. I don't know. He probably doesn't know. He probably doesn't even know who American Pharaoh is, believe it or not. Though certainly I'm sure people are trying to tell him. To me, he's a terrific horse. He's a horse that just does whatever he has to do. And I say that as somebody who had little respect for him, thought he was an absolute throw-out in the Breeders' Cup, where he overcame a tough trip and proved to be much the best. And he's just run well in all his races. I mean, he's an extremely likable horse. He was not lucky to win the Derby. He was attending a pretty quick pace, and he still had enough to hold off the closers. I think he's a very likable horse. Is he shown himself to be fast enough to be considered one of the all-time greats? No, he hasn't. But with all due respect to American Pharaoh, neither had he. And I know he ran a very fast race in the Breeders' Cup, but he did a lot of things under very good circumstances. And Nyquist has shown already that he doesn't need things to go his own way. He can win with any kind of trip, and I think he's a terrific horse. Now, I'm not sure he's going to win this race, but I think he's a terrific horse and a very deserving horse.
Andy, one of the things about Nyquist that people have been talking about is that he does not like to be challenged. He doesn't want another horse ahead of him. He's got sort of that unique attribute that some horses very rarely have, and that he somehow realizes that he's supposed to be the one in front.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm very careful about attributing human characteristics to horses, but he does seem to find a way to win, and I think there's an argument for him more than a lot of horses. You'll see that he does, that whole runs as fast as he has to. Now, that's not to say if he meets a horse that's just too fast for him, he's going to beat him. But considering the crop of 3-year-olds we're dealing with that as of yet has not distinguished themselves in any way, he's superior to them. He's beaten Exaggerator 4 times, his chief rival. He may not beat him tomorrow. He might lose to Exaggerator tomorrow. Doesn't mean he's not the better horse. Sometimes, and at some point, I think maybe a trip is going to help another horse enough to beat him. And that could be tomorrow. Because even though Nyquist isn't compromised by a fast pace because he can rate, there's plenty of speed in this race. And I think that's going to help Exaggerator. And when you combine that with the fact that it's a wet track that Exaggerator can run well on, and you don't know for sure that Nyquist will run his best race, I think he's right to be beaten by Exaggerator. I'm not saying he will be, but Exaggerator is a very big threat to beat tomorrow.
Follow him on Twitter at Andy Serling, getting ready for the Preakness. Andy, there's a lot of people who, they like to say the whole, if that race was a couple lengths longer, Exaggerator would have caught him.
It's ridiculous.
If ifs and nuts were candies and butts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Right. Yeah. But what do you say to that? Like, is there a way you look at that and go, you know what? There is a little bit of luck for Nyquist that Exaggerator didn't catch him.
No, I don't think that's fair because you can't, it's like anything. It's like the people that claim after the Golden State OKC game 1, that somehow Russ Westbrook apparently traveling and not getting called, that was a decisive moment in the game. Or a guy, turning the ball over like in the NCAA finals, Georgetown and North Carolina. It's to disregard everything else that happened during the race. And if the race was a little bit longer. Well, if the race was a little bit longer, everybody would have made their moves at slightly different times as well. And what's to say that the race wouldn't have played out exactly the same way? Nyquist wasn't lucky to beat Exaggerator. He ran a better race. Exaggerator did have some brief trouble around the turn, but for a deep closer in a 20-horse field, he had a remarkably good trip.
Yeah, this field is what, 11 horses?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's not going to have, Exaggerator's not going to have as many to run around or run through.
Right.
So he may have a better trip. The Preakness is just a tiny bit shorter than the Derby, correct?
It is. But, in reality, shorter races in this situation are probably more favorable to closers than they are to speed horses. The misnomer, this idiocy that you hear every year after the Derby about some horse, this year it was sudden breaking news, he's a Belmont horse. Those Belmont horses, they never win. not occasionally. They never win. It's not a question of how far they're going. That's not going to help the closers. A race like the Belmont is actually more conducive to speed horses because they can gallop the closers into submission and go slower up front. Whereas the Preakness, and this Preakness in particular, have a lot of horses that figure to be forwardly placed. So the likelihood that it's not only a reasonably fast pace, but also a contentious pace is pretty strong, and that's going to help Exaggerator. I don't think it's going to badly compromise Nyquist, but it's going to help Exaggerator, and it may help him enough to beat Nyquist. He's not the better horse, but he might be the better horse on Saturday.
Yeah, you bring up a good point earlier, too. Greatness, as far as a horse goes, has a lot to do with who he is running against during his 3-year-old year. You know, where timing, you don't have to set track records in this field of 3-year-olds to be able to win races.
No, I mean, you have to be better than your competition. It's just like anything. Everything is relative. And the case of Nyquist, he's clearly shown himself at this point to be better than his competition. That doesn't mean he's going to show up and run his best race every time, though so far he has. He can lose. And, you know, Stradivari, who's the third choice and should be the third choice, he is a talented horse. I mean, there's a chance that he's a very good horse. Is there a chance he's a Bernardini-like good horse? I mean, there always is because we don't know. But, you know, when you look at Stradivari, he's a horse that has run 2 races in a row for Todd Pletcher. One was an off-the-turf maiden race at Gulfstream, and then against absolutely nobody, and claimers. And then he shows up 4 months later and beats a bunch of nobodies, but does it in a very fast race and does it impressively at Keeneland. Now, he might be a super talent, but he has absolutely no experience whatsoever. And you take him against horses like Nyquist and Exaggerator that are true battle-hardened veterans, and it's going to take a horse like Stradivari to be an exceptional talent, a Bernardini-type talent, to beat horses like this, even if in 2 months he's a better horse. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, but I think it's extremely unlikely that a horse like Stradivari can beat Nyquist, and I'll be very surprised if anybody wins this race besides Exaggerator and Nyquist.
Naira's Andy Serling right here on 104.5 The Team, getting ready for the Preakness. Okay, Andy, I got a little bit of scratch that I made in the Derby. How am I reinvesting that in the Preakness?
Well, first thing you're doing, you're going to Naira, and you're joining Naira.com. You're putting your money in. We're giving $150 bonuses to people who deposit up to $150.
Yeah, that's
match that if you bet it in a week.
Yeah, that's
so
a great
that's
deal.
One thing you can do. So you'll have extra money, even if, God forbid, you should lose. You're going to make money in the Dixie, a race before the Preakness with Takeover Target. So you're really going to be loaded for bear. And, you know, you're going to make a play, and you're going to go, it's going to seem very obvious, but here's the play. The first play you make is an Exaggerator with Nyquist finishing first and second, with Cherry Wine finishing third. And then you make a smaller triple play where you've got Cherry Wine getting second and splitting the two of them. But I think that Exaggerator and Nyquist are very likely to run 1-2 in this race, and Cherry Wine looks like the right suck-up horse for third to me.
I love it. Andy Serling from Naira, and that Naira.com, I can wager there? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible. I know. It's amazing what's happening on the internet these days. It really is. You can wager there. You can watch all the races. You can watch them on HD. You can watch our shows. You can watch replays. You can watch whatever you want. But you really should be joining up and betting on there. It's great. The rebates are good. We're offering lots of bonuses, deposit bonuses, match bonuses. So there's a whole lot going on there. It's a whole wide world. It's open to everybody.
Where you been, Jeff?
I know. Well, here's the beauty of this. Again, follow Andy Serling at Andy Serling on Twitter. Wolf and I have to go host Brewfest in Saratoga tomorrow, so I was a little upset, and then I downloaded the Naira app onto my tablet, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, you downloaded the Naira HD app. I mean, wait until you see that. Your life is going to it's just never going to be the same.
Yeah, this will be the first time I've used the HD app. Okay, now I'm getting excited.
I'm a little jealous I'm not going to be in Brewfest in Saratoga.
Well, I mean, you know you're always welcome. You could be our personal guest, and we can all just use our tablets and walk around drinking beer.
If I could take tomorrow off, there's no other place I'd rather be.
Andy Serling from Naira. Follow him on Twitter at Andy Serling. Andy, thank you so much, and hopefully we all cash in with a little cherry wine with our Brewfest. And next thing you know, we'll be talking about either a Triple Crown chase or how to make money at the Belmont.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, guys.